The insult landed before she even reached the front desk. "People like you don't belong here." The words sliced through the air like broken glass, sharp and deliberate, echoing against the marble walls of the Meridian Plaza, the tallest building in East Bridge City. Every conversation in the grand lobby froze. Heads turned. Phones lifted. The crowd could smell a scandal before it even began, and standing in the middle of it all, perfectly still, was Dr. Maya Benton. A calm woman in a deep cobalt blue suit, her skin glowing under the sterile light, her presence both commanding and understated. She held only a thin black folder and a small tote bag. No entourage. No display of wealth. Nothing that shouted power. But her stillness? That said everything. The man who blocked her path was Grant, the building's chief security officer, tall, broad, face carved from years of suspicion. His badge gleamed as if it granted him the right to decide who belonged and who didn't. "Ma'am," he said, his tone curdled with arrogance, "deliveries are made through the back entrance." The words rolled out like oil over water. A few people snickered. Others began recording. To them, this was just entertainment, a morning spectacle. But to Maya, it was something else. It was history repeating itself. Her gaze never wavered. Her heartbeat didn't race. The same calm she'd learned to master after years of being underestimated held her steady. Behind the reception counter, Clara, a young receptionist with a plastic smile and sharper eyes, leaned forward. "You'll need to wait outside, miss. We'll call someone from management if it's necessary." Unnecessary cruelty wrapped in politeness. The whispers spread fast. "Who does she think she is? She doesn't look like she works here. Maybe she's lost." Grant's hand clamped around her arm, firm, possessive. "You can leave now. You're making a scene." Maya looked down at his grip, then back up into his eyes, not with anger and with something colder. Something that made even Grant shift his weight, and that silence, that quiet defiance, made the whole lobby uneasy. From near the elevators, a young intern named Eli hesitated. His phone trembled in his hand as he began to record. He didn't know her, but something about the scene, the way the guard's voice rose while hers stayed calm, didn't sit right. This wasn't routine procedure. It was humiliation wrapped in authority. Within seconds, Mr. Dalton, the operations manager, stepped out of the glass doors. His walk was deliberate, his voice dripping with superiority. "What's going on here?" he demanded. His eyes scanned Maya as if she were an uninvited guest at his table. "Sir?" Clara chimed in sweetly. "She's trying to enter without clearance." Dalton didn't even look at her folder. He just scoffed. "Well, whoever she is, she can take her business somewhere else. We have standards." He ripped the visitor pass from her lapel and tossed it to the floor. It skidded across the marble, the sound sharp as thunder in the quiet. A hush fell over the lobby. Maya bent down slowly, gracefully, and picked up the badge. When she stood, her expression hadn't changed, but her silence carried the weight of a storm waiting to break. Grant crossed his arms. "You heard him. You're done here." Still, she said nothing. Only her eyes, steady and unreadable, seemed to ask one question. "Are you sure you know who you're speaking to?" Dalton snapped his fingers toward security. "Escort her out." Eli's voice cracked through the tension. "Wait, she hasn't even explained herself." "Stay out of this," Dalton barked. But others were whispering now. "She looks familiar. Why is she so calm? What's in that folder?" The energy shifted, almost imperceptibly, like the moment before lightning hits. The more they mocked her, the less certain they became. Grant leaned closer, his voice low and hostile. 5 seconds. Walk out on your own or I'll have you removed." Maya didn't move. Her eyes flicked toward the growing circle of phones, then back to him. "Be careful what you say next," she murmured. Grant hesitated. Dalton sneered. "Oh, she's threatening us now. How original." He turned to the receptionist. "Make sure she's blacklisted from every floor. I don't want this kind of chaos near the executives." The receptionist nodded eagerly. "Of course, Mr. Dalton." But before she could type another word into her console, Maya finally spoke, soft but firm enough to freeze the room. "Every second you continue speaking," she said, "you're recording your own downfall." Her voice was calm, but her words struck with surgical precision. The crowd murmured. "What does that mean?" "Is she serious?" Dalton rolled his eyes. "You think you scare me? Who are you, anyway?" Maya tilted her head slightly. You'll find out soon enough. And with that, she reached into her pocket, not in panic, but with the deliberate control of someone who knew she didn't need to raise her voice to be heard. Her phone lit up. She tapped once and spoke quietly. "Activate internal command protocol." Everyone heard it. The words hung in the air like the calm before a storm. A crisp voice replied through the speaker. "Command protocol active. Tracking initiated." Grant frowned. Dalton laughed nervously. "What nonsense is this?" Maya's gaze lifted from her phone. "You'll see." The lobby seemed to hum, whispers, gasps. Uncertainty thick in the air. The power had just shifted, and no one understood how. Grant's smirk faltered, but Dalton kept talking, his voice sharp and dismissive. "You think calling someone makes you important? This is corporate property. You can't just—" Maya interrupted softly. "I know exactly what this property is." Her tone didn't rise, but the confidence in her words landed heavier than any shout. The air felt thicker, charged. The crowd leaned in, unsure why their stomachs had begun to twist with unease. Dalton straightened his tie, forcing a laugh. "Well, unless you own the place, you're about to be escorted out." Maya's lips curved slightly. "Unless I own it," she repeated. That's an interesting choice of words. The receptionist Clara frowned, confusion flickering in her eyes. Grant glanced at the others. The phones were still up, recording every breath, every glance, every slip of arrogance from those who'd thought they were untouchable. Dalton gestured impatiently. "Grant, finish this." But before he could move, Maya's phone buzzed once. She lifted it calmly to her ear. "Yes," she said. "Confirm authorization." Every word, every image, every action. The voice on the other end was crisp and certain. "Authorization confirmed, Dr. Benton. Logs are active." The word doctor hung in the air like a spark. Dalton blinked. "Doctor?" Eli's camera trembled in his hands. She's not lying." Grant frowned. "Doctor of what exactly?" "Doctor of ownership," Maya replied coolly. "Doctor of everything you thought you controlled." A stunned silence washed through the room. Someone near the coffee stand whispered, "Did she just say she owns this place?" Dalton barked a laugh, but it cracked halfway through. "Ridiculous. You think I'd be taking orders from you? You've made a scene and now you're inventing stories to cover your embarrassment." He stepped forward, towering over her. "You're done, leave." Maya didn't move. Her calm was a mirror reflecting every flaw in his anger. "Tell me," she said quietly. "How long have you worked here?" 7 years, he spat, impatient. "And in all those years," she continued, "did it ever occur to you that respect should not be earned by fear, but by fairness?" He blinked, caught off guard. Maya turned her head toward Grant. "And you? Do you know the difference between protection and prejudice?" Grant shifted his stance, suddenly unsure. The air trembled with whispers again. Even Clara's fingers stopped moving across her keyboard. Dalton exhaled loudly, trying to reassert dominance. "Enough philosophy. Get her out of here." "Don't," said a voice from the back. It was Eli. His face was pale, but his voice was clear. "She's telling the truth. I just checked the company network. There's a system flag showing active executive protocol. That only happens when the top-level access key is engaged." Dalton froze. "You can't access that system." "I just did," Eli said, holding up his phone. "Whoever she is, she outranks you." The murmur turned into a wave of chatter. Employees started drifting closer, drawn by the magnetic pull of chaos and revelation. Dalton's jaw tightened. "You're making a fool of yourself, am I?" Maya asked softly. "Or are you only realizing that you've been standing in front of someone you should have recognized long ago?" Dalton laughed, but the sound was brittle. "You're bluffing. This is some kind of stunt. You probably watched too many courtroom dramas." "Would you like proof?" Maya asked. Dalton hesitated. Maya reached into her folder and pulled out a single document, a sheet with embossed lettering and a golden seal that shimmered faintly under the lights. She laid it gently on the front desk, right where Clara could see it. The receptionist leaned forward, reading aloud without meaning to. "Executive Certificate of Ownership, the Meridian Group Holdings. Dr. Maya Benton." Gasps erupted instantly. Phone zoomed in, clicking, flashing. Dalton's color drained. That can't be real." Maya's tone remained calm, even kind. "It's real enough to end this conversation." Grant took a half step back. Clara covered her mouth. Eli just whispered, "Oh my God." Maya turned slightly toward Dalton. "You said people like me don't belong here." But I built here. I designed every inch of this tower, every policy that keeps it running. You've been standing on ground I paid for with 20 years of my life. The silence that followed wasn't just quiet. It was stunned reverence. Dalton stammered. This must be a misunderstanding. Dalton stammered. This must be a misunderstanding. Maya's eyes didn't soften. The only misunderstanding is that you ever believed authority meant arrogance. Grant swallowed hard. Clara looked down at the floor. Maya's phone buzzed again. She lifted it to her ear. Execute internal review, security front desk. Operations management, a pause. Then the voice on the other end replied, clear and cold. Confirmed. Access suspended. Credentials revoked immediately. Grant's radio crackled, then went dead. Clara's monitor blinked once before the login screen reappeared with red text. Access denied. Dalton's tablet dimmed, then powered off. Someone gasped audibly. She's firing them right now. Dalton's eyes widened. You can't, Maya cut him off gently. I can. And I just did. The murmur in the lobby swelled into applause. Hesitant at first, then unstoppable. Eli's hands trembled as he lowered his phone. I've never seen anything like this, he whispered. Maya glanced toward him, her expression softening for the first time. Remember this moment, she said quietly. Not for the humiliation, but for the truth it revealed. Dalton opened his mouth, but no sound came. Maya's voice carried over the crowd. Every one of you who stood silent while injustice was happening, take note. Power isn't loud. It's steady, and it waits for the right moment to speak. The crowd parted instinctively as she began to walk forward, the echo of her heels marking each second like punctuation to a story no one would forget. And yet, she paused once more, turning back toward them. You thought silence was weakness, she said softly, but silence is only power that has learned patience. Then she turned away, calm and certain, heading for the elevators as the applause grew into a roaring wave that filled the glass walls of the Meridian Plaza. Her presence lingered long after she stepped inside, and for the first time that morning, even the air in the building seemed to know who it belonged to. The elevator doors closed behind her, the sound echoing through the marble hall like a final judgment. But downstairs the silence that followed wasn't peaceful. It was electric, trembling under the weight of what had just happened. Dalton stood frozen, his pride collapsing faster than his career. The realization washed over him like cold rain. His authority, once unquestioned, had been exposed for what it really was. Borrowed. Eli lowered his phone, his chest tight. He had recorded every second, but what lingered wasn't just the footage. It was the feeling, the undeniable shift in the air, like truth itself had finally entered the room. Around him, whispers turned into murmurs, murmurs into fragments of awe. Did you hear what she said? She built this place. I can't believe it. All this time... Grant ran a hand over his face, eyes darting toward the main doors as if looking for escape. Clara sat still behind the desk, the weight of shame pressing down harder than her starched blazer ever could. She couldn't meet anyone's eyes. She can't just fire us, Dalton muttered, voice trembling between anger and disbelief. There has to be a process. Eli turned toward him. There was a process, he said softly. You just didn't know it was watching you. Dalton blinked, the truth slicing through denial. Upstairs, the elevator ascended steadily. Maya stood in the center, breathing evenly, her reflection mirrored across the gold panels. The adrenaline hadn't touched her composure. But behind that calm, there was exhaustion. Years of quiet endurance of watching people like Dalton mistake dignity for submission. Her mind drifted back. She remembered her first day at the old Meridian offices, when her ideas were dismissed before she even finished her sentences. She remembered every meeting where her vision had been questioned, every boardroom where her competence had been doubted until she proved it 3 times over. And she remembered the vow she made the day she became CEO. Never let silence be mistaken for weakness again. As the elevator doors opened onto the executive floor, a hush settled there too. Her assistant, Jordan, stood up immediately. Ma'am, send a notice to HR, Maya said. Immediate terminations. Grant Harlan, Clara Mills, Peter Dalton. Their records will show violation of conduct policy, Section 4, discrimination and abuse of power. Jordan nodded quickly. Yes, Dr. Benton, effective immediately. Also, she added, her tone softening but still resolute, offer them counseling support. No one leaves this company broken, but they will leave it accountable. Jordan blinked, surprised by her calm mercy. Understood. Maya walked to the window. From there she could see the lobby far below. A sea of tiny faces still gathered in disbelief. The city spread beyond it, a skyline she had once only dreamed of being part of. Downstairs, the fired trio stood in a stunned triangle. Security personnel approached quietly, not aggressive, not rushed, just official. Grant's radio was still dead. Dalton's tablet useless. Clara wiped a tear before she even realized she was crying. As they were escorted out, the murmuring crowd shifted. No one jeered. No one gloated. For the first time, everyone seemed to understand the weight of what they had just witnessed. Eli looked around. "This is going to change everything," he whispered. An older employee beside him nodded. "It already has." For years, people like Maya had walked those halls unseen, unheard, doubted. Today, she had changed that. And the story, the one the world would soon repeat, wasn't just about power. It was about reclamation. Upstairs, Maya opened her office door. It was quiet, too quiet. The kind of silence that holds memory. On her desk was a framed photograph. Her mother standing in front of a small grocery store decades ago. A handwritten sign in the window. Credit available for all. That had been her mother's philosophy. Fairness. No matter who stood across from you. Maya touched the frame gently. "I did it," she whispered. Her phone buzzed again, Jordan's message lighting up the screen. All 3 terminations processed. HR acknowledged. The internal footage is secured for review. She typed back one word. Good. Then, after a pause, another. Public. Jordan replied within seconds. You want the footage released internally? Yes, Maya wrote. Every employee deserves to see what happens when silence stands up. Downstairs, Eli's phone vibrated. A notification flashed across the screen. Internal company bulletin. Official communication from the CEO. He opened it. The video began to play. The same moment that had made the entire lobby hold its breath, now spread across hundreds of devices throughout the building. The confrontation, the words, the truth. One by one, people stopped working. Screens flickered on in meeting rooms, hallways, even the cafeteria. The company itself began to watch. And when Maya's voice reached the line, silence isn't weakness. It's power. Learning patience. Every listener felt it, not as a slogan, as a lesson. For a long moment, no one spoke. Then someone whispered, "About time." The applause that followed wasn't in a lobby anymore. It came from every floor, every department, every corner where someone had once been made to feel small. Maya watched the city skyline as the echoes rose up through the building like a tide finally turning. For the first time in years, she smiled, because this wasn't about revenge. It was about repair, and somewhere far below, the crowd, those who had watched her endure the insult, knew they hadn't just seen a CEO defend herself. They had seen a woman redefine what leadership meant. That night, the building did not sleep. Word of what happened in the Meridian Plaza spread faster than any official memo ever could. Messages flashed through internal channels. Whispered fragments echoed in elevators. And quiet disbelief filled the company cafeteria. In department after department, people began to talk, really talk for the first time. Did you hear how she handled them? She didn't even raise her voice. She looked at him like she'd been waiting her whole life for that moment. It wasn't gossip. It was awe. The moment had rewritten the company's culture in real time. The fear that used to hang over the lower floors, the kind that kept people from speaking out, was beginning to dissolve. Eli sat at his desk long after his shift ended. His phone still held the full recording. Every time he replayed it, his chest tightened at the same point. When Maya said, "Power isn't loud, it waits." He realized he'd witnessed something more than a confrontation. He'd witnessed a turning point. The next morning, an email arrived in every inbox. Open Forum's company-wide meeting at 10 a.m. It was signed by Dr. Maya Benton. By 9:45, the auditorium was full. People who had never cared about meetings before now filled every seat. Even the walls seemed to hum with anticipation. When Maya entered, the room went silent. Not out of fear, but respect. She carried no entourage, no notes, no slides. Just her presence. "I know what you've all heard," she began simply. "And I know what you've seen." Her voice carried a calm strength that made people lean forward instead of sit back. What happened yesterday wasn't planned, but it was necessary. The crowd held its breath. "I built this company to stand for something more than glass walls and profit margins. I wanted it to be a place where ideas rise higher than titles and where respect isn't a privilege. It's a foundation." She paused, scanning the faces in front of her. Some ashamed, some proud, some still stunned. But somewhere along the way, she continued, that vision was buried under the weight of arrogance, fear, and complacency. Yesterday that mask cracked, and we saw what happens when silence chooses to stand. Eli felt his throat tighten. Around him, people nodded slowly. "I don't want anyone here to be afraid to speak again," Maya said. "If you see wrong, say it. If you feel overlooked, raise your hand. And if anyone tries to silence you, remember, power belongs to those who stay calm long enough to use it wisely." Her words weren't loud, but they carried like thunder across the hall. For a long time, no one spoke. Then someone in the back began to clap. Slowly, others joined. Within seconds, the room was filled with applause so fierce it shook the ceiling panels. Maya smiled faintly. "This isn't applause for me," she said. "It's applause for all of us, because from today forward, this building will stand for something better." After the meeting, employees lingered in the halls talking not about her authority but about her integrity. New conversations sprouted like fresh air after a storm. "Do you think she'll really change the policies?" "She already has," Eli said quietly. "You can feel it." On the top floor, Maya returned to her office. Jordan was waiting with a stack of reports and a hesitant expression. "They're saying the board wants a full review of the incident." "Good," Maya replied. "Let them review. Truth doesn't fear inspection." Jordan smiled. "You've changed this place overnight." Maya turned toward the window again, watching the sunlight spill across the plaza. "No," she said softly. "It was already ready to change. It just needed a moment of honesty." Outside, people crossed the street with lighter steps, glancing up at the tower that no longer just symbolized power, but principle. And somewhere inside that building, on dozens of screens still glowing with the playback of her words, a quiet realization took root. Respect cannot be demanded, it must be earned by how one stands in silence and how one speaks when it matters. Maya knew this wasn't the end of the story. It was the beginning of a better one. She sat down, opened her laptop, and began to write the company's new code of ethics. At the top, she typed a single line before anything else. "Dignity doesn't shout. It leads." Weeks passed, but the memory of that morning didn't fade. It became part of the building's pulse, whispered in conference rooms, told to new hires as both warning and inspiration. People said the day Dr. Maya Benton spoke without shouting was the day Meridian stopped being just another company. It became a mirror. The board called her in for an official review. The long glass conference table was lined with gray suits and cautious eyes. But this time, no one dared to speak to her with the old tone of dismissal. Maya took her seat at the head, hands folded calmly. One of the senior directors cleared his throat. "Dr. Benton, we've all seen the footage. You handled the situation decisively. But there are questions about your methods." Maya met his gaze without blinking. "You mean holding people accountable in real time?" He hesitated. "You embarrassed them publicly." "I revealed them publicly," she said. The embarrassment was self-inflicted. Another board member shifted uncomfortably. "You've shaken the company." "Good," Maya replied. It needed shaking. For a long moment, no one spoke. The board members weren't used to stillness being this loud. Finally, the chairwoman leaned forward. "Dr. Benton," she said quietly, "you've done what most leaders are too afraid to do. You reminded everyone what integrity looks like." A faint smile touched Maya's lips. "Integrity," she said, "isn't about being perfect. It's about refusing to stay silent when you're surrounded by it." The meeting ended not with applause but with something deeper, respect. The kind that didn't fade when the door closed. Later that evening, Maya walked through the now quiet lobby. It looked different, though nothing physical had changed. The same marble floor, the same golden lights, yet the air itself felt lighter, as if the building had exhaled a breath it had been holding for years. Eli stood near the reception desk, packing up his things for the night. When he saw her, he straightened immediately. "Dr. Benton," he said quickly, almost nervously. "I just wanted to say, what you did, it made a lot of us believe this place could actually be fair." She studied him for a moment, her expression softening. "What you did mattered too, Eli." He looked confused. "Me? You spoke up," she said, when everyone else stayed quiet. "Change doesn't start with power. It starts with courage. You had that before you even knew my name." Eli smiled faintly. "I just didn't want to regret staying quiet." "Then don't ever," she replied. "Silence has its place, but never when it's the enemy of truth." As she turned to leave, Eli called after her. "Dr. Benton." "Yes?" He hesitated, then said, "What made you stay calm through all that?" Maya's gaze drifted upward toward the glass ceiling, where the fading sunset poured light across the steel beams. "Because," she said slowly, "anger burns fast, but patience shapes history." Eli nodded, not sure what to say, but knowing he'd remember that sentence for the rest of his life. Maya walked out into the cool evening air. The plaza stretched before her, city lights beginning to bloom. For the first time in years, she didn't feel like she was walking into battle. She was walking into peace, one she had earned, one she had built. Across the street, a woman held the door open for a janitor carrying supplies. Two young employees chatted about fairness and management policies. Small gestures, tiny ripples, proof that the day's storm had already begun changing tides. Maya paused and looked up at the tower's gleaming surface. Her reflection looked back, older, steadier, unbreakable. "I don't need to prove anything anymore," she murmured. "The proof is standing." The city wind picked up, carrying the faint hum of distant applause, a sound that wasn't for performance, but for principle. She took a deep breath, feeling the weight of everything she'd endured lift just slightly. The world would remember that a woman once stood in silence, and the silence won. And as she walked away from the plaza, heels clicking like a heartbeat, one thought lingered in her mind: dignity doesn't shout. It endures, and then it rebuilds everything it touches. That night, as the tower lights flickered to life, a new inscription appeared in the company's entrance lobby. A simple plaque with her words etched in steel. "Power doesn't prove itself by force. It proves itself by grace under fire." Everyone who passed it paused just for a second and felt the truth of it settle in their bones. And so the story of Dr. Maya Benton, once doubted, dismissed, and underestimated, became something greater than a headline. It became a reminder that silence, when held with purpose, can roar louder than any voice ever could. The applause may have faded that day, but the echo of it lived on in every person who chose to stand a little taller, speak a little clearer, and never mistake quiet strength for weakness again.